Hello everyone, and welcome to Changeling Gaming. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to play Heat, Pedal to the Metal. Heat, Pedal to the Metal is a level 2 play-to-learn experienced family game designed by Sidekick Studio and published by Days of Wonder for 1 to 6 players that takes on average an hour and a half to play. In Heat, Pedal to the Metal, we become race car drivers, speeding around the track and trying to keep our engines from overheating, while pushing them to the limit to rush past our opponents and slip in front just at the end to win the race. This game has a base version of the game, as well as several advanced options. We will review the advanced options and their setup in a separate video you can find up here if you want to see those, but only take a look if you understand the base game rules present in this video. Setup. First, decide which track you're going to race from the 4 available tracks. The game recommends a first race on the USA map. Have each player select a color. They'll receive the matching player match, race car, gear pawn, speed cards, and starting upgrade cards. Examine the game board to determine how many heat cards and stress cards to deal to each player. The default for each board is 6 heat cards and 3 stress cards, but with the advanced options, this can be changed. In addition, players who are experienced with this game can handicap themselves by taking 1 or 2 fewer heat cards at the top of the game. Each player shuffles the stress cards into their main deck, placing it on the leftmost space, and placing the heat cards face up in their engine in the center of their player board. Place the gear shift pawn in the first position. Place the rest of the stress cards next to the game board. Pass all the cards to one player who will shuffle them together and randomly place them at the start of the track in order from first to last. How to play. The game plays in a series of rounds where every player works through the same series of steps. The first 2 steps are played simultaneously by all the players. These steps are: decide which gear the player wants to be in, and play a number of cards face down equal to the gear the player is in. When deciding which gear to be in, a player can stay in the same gear or go up or down 1 gear at no cost. Or they can go up or down 2 gears, but to do so they must spend a heat card, taking it from their engine and moving it into their discard pile. Once every player has their cards prepped face down, they move into individual turns. Turns proceed from the player currently in first place through to the player in last place. That order is determined by who is furthest down the track, and if 2 players are on the same space, then the player who's closer to the side with the thicker line, known as the race line, going before the other. One at a time, players will proceed through the following steps, also laid out at the top of each player's player mat. Only 2 are required, steps 3 and 9. 5 through 8 are all optional or conditional based on the events of the race. Step 3 is where the player reveals their played cards and moves their card forward a number of spaces equal to the total across all the cards. Among those cards that can be played are stress cards. These will generate a random speed between 1 and 4 by flipping over cards from the top of the player's deck until they reveal a card with this speedometer symbol. Cards without this symbol are discarded, and the card that does have a match is added to the played cards for the round. Note that cards can always pass through each other, but cannot end on a space that is full of other cards, being placed just behind them instead. Cards should also always be placed next to the race line if possible. Step 4 is the first conditional step, as it only applies to the last place driver, or last 2 places if there are 5 or more racers. The drivers that receive this adrenaline benefit are able to increase their speed by 1 before the end of the next step, and they also gain a cooldown of 1 that they can use in the next step as well. Step 5 has 2 main options in the base game, though many other cards' activated abilities occur in this step within the advanced modules, which the player can activate in any order. The 2 main options in Step 5 are cooldown and boost. If taking the cooldown option, the player consults the gear they're in and adds an extra cooldown if they gained the benefits of Step 4. This total is the number of heat cards they can play from their hand into their heat pile, allowing those to be used in paying heat costs for various abilities and effects. If taking the boost option, the player moves the heat card from their engine into their discard pile and then draws until they hit a random speed, as if they had just played a stress card. Step 6 only applies if a car finishes its move 1 space behind or adjacent to another car. If this has occurred, then the driver can choose to move forward by an extra 2 spaces, though this is not added to their speed for the round. Step 7 only applies if a car has passed around a corner, which are delineated by these thicker lines and are marked by a number. That number is the speed limit for the corner in question, and is compared against the total speed from cards played, including the values gained from stress reveals, boosting, and the last place's adrenaline extra space. If the driver's total is equal to or less than the speed limit, then nothing happens. But if the total is higher, then the player must spend heat cards equal to the difference, moving them from their engine to their discard pile. If a player passes through multiple corners, then they must check if they have exceeded the speed limit for each of those corners, and pay heat accordingly for each corner. If a player does not have enough heat cards to pay for the difference between the speed limit and their actual speed, then that player spins out. Move their race car back to the closest available space right before the corner they failed to pass. Place all their heat cards in their discard pile. Move their gear pawn to the first gear, and then they add a single stress card to their hand if they were in first or second gear, or 2 stress cards to their hand if they were in third or fourth gear. Step 8 allows players to discard unwanted cards from their hand, but many cards have this symbol that indicates they cannot discard that card. Most notably, all heat cards and stress cards have this symbol and therefore cannot be discarded. Finally comes the last required step, which is where the player finally moves all their played cards to their discard pile and redraws up to 7 cards. One rare circumstance worth mentioning is if a player ever doesn't have enough playable cards for their gear due to having too many heat cards in hand, then they play all they can, making up the difference with heat cards, then fail to move, go straight to first gear, skip over all the other steps, and go straight to step 9, replenishing their hand of cards. There are also some small changes at the very end of the game. Cars cannot slipstream across the finish line, and cannot slipstream once they have passed the finish line for the final lap. Disregard any corner speed limits that have been passed by cars after they've passed the finish. Simply use the track spaces to determine how far each car moves beyond the finish line. This is because at the end of the round, the car that has moved the furthest beyond the finish line takes the highest available podium slot, with race line proximity being used to break ties between cars on the same space. Keep racing until all the cars have finished, and continue to award the Step 4 adrenaline bonus based on the number of cars that were present at the start of the game. Whoever takes the highest podium position has finished first and won the race. So go out and rev your engines as the race is about to begin, and you need to manage your car's engine, the track's twists and turns, and all the other drivers vying to prove themselves superior to you. Who will come out on top? Race and find out as you put the pedal to the metal in this heated exchange. Be sure to support your local game stores. For us, that is Board Game To Go, who offer over 2,000 games for rental within the Toronto area and many games for purchase. If you're curious about this game, check out the link in the description. If you have any questions about the game, feel free to pose them in the comments below, or take a look to see if someone else has already answered it down there, and be sure to thank them if they have. If you want to learn more about what a ranking system means, check out this video here. And if you want to learn how to play more games, check out our playlist here. And remember, keep changing, keep gaming, have fun.